Thank you, everybody. So welcome old and new participants to our fourth Bridging Communities Café session. As a capacity building and engagement signature program series of the Bridges Sustainability Science Coalition, this Bridging Communities Café series is really about building critically conscious, actively engaged and interconnected communities of change agents working to advance sustainable well-being and social and ecological justice. Our featured topic for this very special Earth Month Café today asks us to consider, what are your sounds of belonging, and what does belonging itself mean to you? For those who are joining their very first Bridges event, Bridges is a global sustainability science coalition that's organized within the UNESCO's Management of Social Transformations program. As a humanities-led transdisciplinary boundary connecting coalition, Bridges is about promoting transformative collaborations and connections across the arts, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences in partnerships with diverse communities, cultures, and knowledges. To learn more about Bridges, because I don't want to take up too much time going into that, we and our 5 global hubs, including our very own ASU's Bridges flagship hub, I invite you to visit our new website, and I'm posting that link in the chat right now. And we'll also post it again near the end for people that are struggling in. But there's plenty on there, but keep in mind that's a work in progress website. So there'll be a lot more to come, and hopefully we'll be able to feature these cafe recordings as well as our other events in the future. Without further ado, I want to introduce myself. My name is Juliana Gavish, and I'm your Bridging Communities Cafe Series designer and lead host. And among the many different hats I wear, I serve as the capacity building and engagement lead for Bridges, as well as the senior global future scientist for ASU's Global Futures Laboratory, which is where the ASU flagship hub is actually based. I'm now going to gratefully turn the floor over to Dr. Melissa Nelson, Indigenous Sustainability Professor, to lead us in a land acknowledgement. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you all and welcome. Great to be here with you. I'll introduce myself later, but we always start with the words that come before all else, acknowledging all that gives us life, the earth, the sun, the stars, the plants, the animals, and to really honor and recognize all that gives us life so that we can be here today and share. And with that, we acknowledge and honor the lands where we are on. Here at Arizona State University in the Salt River Valley of Phoenix, we are on the lands of the Akimel Atum and Peeposh people, the proud Native nations of the Maricopa Pima and the Maricopa Pima Indian community, and also the Gila River tribe. There are 23 indigenous nations in Arizona, and we honor and recognize their ancestral knowledge, all of the wisdom that they've had to live sustainably in this beautiful desert landscape for thousands and thousands of years. We also recognize they have survived a conquest, they have survived colonialism, and they are still here today as proud nations, as strong, resilient peoples, and that we honor and thank them for taking care of this beautiful land and allowing us to be here. I also acknowledge their strong futures, that their future generations will continue to persist and thrive in their beautiful homelands, and that we may all thrive to be good neighbors and good settlers and good allies in this beautiful area. So thank you for taking a moment to acknowledge the lands and peoples of Arizona State University. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Before kind of following up on that, before we get into full introductions and the program at hand, as usual, I'd like us to begin with a grounding exercise, very short. And I'm going to ask all of you to please close your eyes and take a moment to listen deeply, essentially, to your current environments, be they natural or man-made, from which you're joining us today. After this minute, I'll ask you to post in the chat one word or short phrase that captures the emotions that stirred up in you, how you're sensing that soundscape that you're hearing today. So, and now. Okay, I welcome you all back. Please, if you can, post in the chat just one word or short phrase, just capturing how you felt in that listening. And then for some, that may have been a little bit more difficult than others. For some, there may have been distractions or things going around, or may have been very peaceful. So please share. And then I will now gratefully welcome three wonderful colleagues and key partners from our narrative storytelling initiative's Sound of Belonging project at Arizona State University's Global Futures Laboratory. Each of these wonderful humans had many different roles, identities, values, and perceptions, and lived experiences that make up their stories and really shape their narratives. So for that reason, I really want them to introduce themselves, however they so choose. I'll begin with Dr. Melissa Nelson, then we have Alma Televichevich, did I get that right? Close enough. And Aaron Peters. So Melissa, if you would be so kind to start.
I greet you all as relatives in the native language of my mother's people, the Anishinaabe, also known as Ojibwe or Chippewa, and also Cree. My name is Melissa Nelson. I am an enrolled citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians. I am a professor of Indigenous Sustainability at Arizona State University. I'm a transdisciplinary scholar activist and a cross-pollinator, and I'm really happy to be here with you all. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Alma, would you go ahead?
Thank you so much for trying to pronounce my last name. It's usually a good icebreaker, and I don't do that to people. So my name is Alma Televichevich. I'm originally from Bosnia, Sarajevo. I have an honor to work as a coordinator for Narrative Storytelling Initiative with award-winning journalist Stephen Bashos, who is a founding director. The Narrative Storytelling Initiative is part of Julian Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, which is part of Arizona State University. And we are dedicated to expanding the population of knowledgeable narrators and enhancing the quality and scale of their public engagement. We have lots of projects, but I'm glad that you're here for this particular one because I'm very much excited. I do want to say hi to Carolina, who is a friend from Croatia, who was a Fulbright scholar here a couple of years ago, and I have not seen her since, and I'm glad that she joined us. And I will share a link for the Narrative Storytelling Initiative in a chat, and I'm here for any possible question you may have about anything, and there is no such a thing as a wrong question.
Endless source of knowledge. Thank you, Alma. And Aaron, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, it's great to see you all again and meet you, to those that I'm meeting for the first time. So I have the great fortune of working as a communications coordinator within the Global Futures Laboratory at Arizona State University. I work specifically with two units, the Bridges Sustainability Science Coalition Flagship Hub and the Narrative Storytelling Initiative. So I get to be sort of the connector between many fantastic networks here in the lab. And I'm going to put our social media channels in the chat for the Bridges Coalition, and they're also behind me on my background here. So if throughout it you want to take a look at these and give us a follow, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, ladies, for taking on this particular cafe today and co-designing us with us together. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who will begin to speak a little bit about more the Sounds of Belonging project, and particularly her own contributions to those narratives. Melissa, please.
Thank you, Juliana, and thank you all for being here. We are very excited to launch this really important project that is part of the storytelling initiative. Stephen Beschloss is the director of that and sadly can't join us today, but he sends his best and has been working to develop really innovative applied media projects highlighting success stories in sustainability and resilience. And we started conversations actually a couple of years ago about Sounds of Belonging and the importance of listening and the importance of really bringing the environment closer, more intimately connected to our own experiences, our own sense of place, but being able to share that globally with other people. And so that we could really shorten the distance and kind of enter each other's homes, so to speak, through sound, so that we welcome each other into our spaces spaces through a sound of belonging. It may be the sound of a river or wind, or friends cooking in the kitchen, or a storyteller talking about a favorite food. So we really wanted these sounds of belonging to come from people, very self-determined stories and sounds of what sounds like home to you. And coming from an Indigenous background and tradition, and working with Native American communities and Indigenous folks around the world, you know, we are oral cultures, both oral cultures with the voice and oral cultures with the ear. And so we thought about, why not work on really focusing by launching Sounds of Belonging, by talking to Indigenous folks who have such a deep, long-term tradition of listening and of knowing the world through sound and through story. And sound is really a receptive experience, right? There's a famous quote that the eye brings a person into the world, but sound brings the world inside a human being. And so that reciprocal relationship of all the senses, but especially sound, is very intimate and very personal. And we wanted to be able to share these stories and kind of reawaken our senses and our soundscapes. With modern media, so much is focused on visual and outward looking, and sound kind of makes us receptive, really feminine in a way, and perceptive. And sound can really awaken emotions, like the universal language of music. We may not speak the same, you know, symbolic or verbal language, but when you hear music, it can evoke so many things that are beyond words. And so we wanted to focus on this incredible power of sound. Native people in all traditional cultures tell elaborate stories and remember them in our bodies, right? And that's why there's always the link between story and sound and dance, because it's a way that our language was recorded, if you will, and continued throughout time intergenerationally when we share these stories and these movements and these dances and these gestures. And really, even many have said that, you know, mindfulness or even meditation came from Paleolithic hunters and gatherers who are going out on the land to find food and medicine. You have to listen, right? You have to be very still. You know, if there's a herd of antelope there, or buffalo, or bears, or birds, or whatever it is. And even plants make sound. The sound of the wind through different trees makes very different sound. And the sounds of certain seed pods popping, they make sound when you walk on crunching leaves. And so this is part of this field of acoustical ecology that is really related to our sounds of belonging. And so after Stephen and I, along with Alma and others, have had these conversations, I said, why don't I invite a group of really a lot of my Indigenous friends who also do storytelling and dancing and are really extraordinary scholars and activists in their own right, what they would like to share. So we collected about a dozen sounds of belonging from all over North America, including Hawaii. And they were very diverse. We had men and women. We had people in their 20s, people in their 60s. So we got a nice range of different generations, different genders, different geographies, to find out what sounded like belonging to these different folks from different tribes and different nations. And we feature only 4 of them on our site currently, and we're curating them and gathering more. And eventually this is for all of you to share your sound of belonging. And so this is just an initial launch event and conversation to begin to discuss what the sounds of belonging are and what they are to you more personally and specifically. So that's a little bit about our background. And I'm very fortunate that I've been married to a musician and recording artist for 35 years, and he's on this call, Colin Farish. And so I've been part of recording soundscapes and storyscapes through the Cultural Conservancy for really over 30 years, and the importance of voice and animating our voices. And so many Indigenous voices and people of color's voices have been marginalized and erased. So when we animate our voices, when we share our voices and our stories and our sounds, it's also a decolonial act. It's also an act of resurgence and of survivance and of liberation. And so I've been involved with recording stories and songs, always honoring the intellectual property rights and cultural property rights and cultural protocols of the individuals and communities recorded, even doing something called catch and release ethnography, where you can use high quality audio recording, audiophile recording of a sound or a story or a language, and then just return it directly to the community, catch it, and then release it back to the community and not retain any of it. So to disrupt those old anthropological extractive practices. And so we offer you now one sound. It's very personal to me, a sound of belonging that I shared. And I was very fortunate, even though I'm Anishinaabe or Chippewa, and my people are from the great northern plains of North Dakota, Minnesota, Manitoba area. I was born and raised in Northern California. And so I was very blessed to be raised in redwood trees, like this picture behind me in the redwood forest. And there are lots of owls in the redwood forest. And so I grew up hearing lots of different types of owls. And when I really thought about a sound of belonging to me, this is what came to mind. Water also is very important to me, and the sound of creeks and rivers and the ocean waves. That's always a deep and primal sound of belonging, I think, for all of us, probably from the womb, right? When we heard the whooshing of the waters. But for me, I decided to record owls because they're just very powerful. And I think the story should speak for itself, and then we can discuss it later.
Thank you, Melissa. Alma, would you go ahead and play that?
In the liminal space between winter and spring and day and night, the great horned owls hoot in the deep woods of Mount Tamalpais. Their syncopated timing is impeccable and sometimes punctuated by a crow, a sparrow, another owl, even the sharp bark of a spotted owl, a rare sound from an endangered species. For some reason, the spotted owl persists in this fragmented second and third growth redwood grove on the ancestral and contemporary lands of the Coast Miwok peoples on Mount Tamalpais. It's ironic they are protected somehow on the edge of the sprawling San Francisco Bay Area, sandwiched between commuter freeways and condos and the wild shores of the Pacific Ocean. I think it's the contrast of the owl's persistent, urgent, and vibrant calls, and then the deep silence between their hoots that gives me this feeling of home and belonging. The owls sound so deliberate, so certain of their own voice. In the gaps, there is this pregnant anticipation. It feels so alive and comforting to me. Their rhythmic calls remind me of now, the mystery of this present moment, being fully alive. I think these hoots have probably reverberated on this mountain and in these forested canyons for centuries. They are truly at home here and remind me that I am too. We'd welcome you to show your face if you can again, like Kenneth did. Thank you. And just share any reflections on that offering.
First of all, I want to say it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I'm a member of the Blackfeet tribe of Montana, and we straddled the border. So we have sister tribes in Montana and Canada, or confederation. You know, and it helped me look at the owl differently, because culturally, for many of the tribes up north, it's a messenger, you know, and it's usually seen as a messenger of not so good news. And so, yeah, I know that when we would hear one, you know, we were taught to go bless ourselves right away and say a little prayer. So for me, it kind of sparked a little bit of emotion in me when I was listening to it, and it maybe helping me look at it a little differently. But like I said, just culturally, it's owls in the cultures up north with the tribes, like I said, are not our messengers of not good things. So I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. It was beautiful.
Yes, if I can respond real quickly to that. Yes, I'm very aware of that, you know, taboo in a way in, you know, our culture, and many tribes around Turtle Island, right, have that concern or warning about them. And yet, you know, I heard them so much. So I thought, okay, they're a messenger, and it's not necessarily an omen of bad things, right? That's what I just started to learn and kind of transform that. And I did talk to an elder about it, and they said, yeah, if you hear them all the time, they have messages for each other that may not be for you. Right. And so it's okay that you know, celebrate them, because they're talking to each other about many different things that have nothing to do with you. And I was like, yes. And then I just kept hearing them. So it changed one of my offerings. Why I picked owls was also to kind of offer them without that kind of ominous omen. I had almost a fear sometimes of them. And it transformed that fear into an appreciation and understanding that they are a messenger of mystery that we may not understand, but it's just important to pay attention to and be alert. Like you said, make an offering. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. Miigwech.
Thank you.
Melissa, you're
Do
muted.
you want to call in folks, Juliana, or you want me to?
I'll go ahead. Kenneth, go ahead. And then Joni, I see your hand as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was quite powerful, and it transposed me across distances and also across time, because as I was listening to it, I think I was hearing more of a bird in my native community from Cameroon, where I come from. In the land of Mbasa, it's a small kingdom of about 30,000 people. And there is it brought two memories of two specific birds. One, the owl, which is nocturnal, usually gives its own sound at night, and it has some very funny interpretations, but I think I will reflect more about that. But one of the interpretations is that we consider it to be associated with witchcraft. And we also tend to interpret its song as saying, because it says something go 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 go, and then we try to transcribe or translate that into my native indigenous language by saying that it is saying "ving girls or which is something like saying widow, come out, let's eat a person." So and so I think that it somehow connects with the idea that was already discussed of them being messengers, and sometimes being messengers of bad omen. And of course, also we can also interpret that in another direction, in a positive direction, in a direction that yes, even if they are messengers of bad omen, perhaps that bad moment is no longer just personal family bad omen, but now maybe the more global bad omen of a sinking world. And then last but not least, I was also thinking about another one that usually sings, and that one signals to us is like a kind of a compass, or it replaces meteorological predictions for us, because when it starts hooting around, then you know that rain is going to fall. So, and we call that one a voodoo. Yeah. So I could go on and on and on, but I think I have to stop here so that other people will have space to say something. Thank you again for
Thank you, Kenneth.
arousing this.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Joni, you go ahead, and then Colin, I see you next.
I want to thank you, Melissa, for that beautiful reflection on owls. And I've worked with Dene people here in the Southwest for over 2 decades, so I'm aware of the idea that the owl is a messenger. And this morning, I took my dogs on my normal walk, which is through 2 separate parks in which a family of owls live. And so every morning, I get to the park around 5 a.m., 5:15, and the owls are always calling to each other, especially in the springtime when they're fledging their babies. But this morning when I got to the park, the owl was sitting on there's a water pipe that comes up out of the ground, and it's not higher than my waist. So I've never seen the owl that low to the ground. And I walked up to it with my dogs, and I thought that it would fly away because I had dogs. And we just sat and we regarded each other for 5 minutes. And so anyway, I'm feeling very much like it's a messenger with messages for, maybe the babies. I don't know, but it feels very significant that happened this morning. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
There's definitely a theme of communication happening there. Thank you, Joni.
Yes, thank you, Joni.
Colin, please.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Colin Parrish, Melissa Nelson's husband, and I pianist, composer, and have a recording studio here in the forest in the redwoods, and just pretty much stepped outside with the microphone to record the owls. And I love the rhythm of their breath and the sound they make, and I was brought up also with the nocturnal association, of course, with owls, but also with the wise old owl, which may have been a cartoon or something I saw. So I haven't had the impression of owls being ominous as much as musical. And then later, when I learned through Melissa and some other tribes and cultures that they could convey omens, I took that as a reminder of impermanence, which is, I think, can be a great gift. That the owl is with the wise old owl alerting us of the fleeting time that we have here, and so in that regard, I've always cherished the owl. It's almost like this reminder to live each day as if it's our last, full of gratitude, and our first full of wonder, which is what the owls mean to me. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Colin. And that is a dream to have that kind of recording studio. That's amazing. Alexander, please. Alexander, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Ah, there you go, headphones.
Is that any better?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, yeah, I started with thanking for organizing this. I've been hearing about the project, not precisely this one, but about bridges, and so I was very curious to tune in. And yeah, the story of owls is, it seems, almost universal in terms of its well, role as a messenger, because I'm coming originally from Germany. I'm living in France since a long time. It seems to be everywhere that, at least here in Northern Europe, basically the owl also has, well, is regarded often a bit negatively, but maybe no longer so much, because that's now maybe my interpretation. I'm always very happy when I'm able to hear one, first of all, because I'm living in a big city, so we don't hear them here at all. That means I'm either at the fringe of a city, where my mother moved to a couple of years ago, and where I'm now able to hear sometimes an owl sitting outside and listening into the trees, and hearing some wind, and feeling that this is yeah, a part of my hometown I had known before my mother moved there, and feeling that there is a new kind of maybe a type of a new flow that in this part of the city, some more life has come back to an area that was heavily industrialized, and where you couldn't hear this type of wildlife anymore. Or the other option is you're really out of any city area, you're really in the countryside, and even then, I mean, this type of variety of diversity, this concert, this is not something that I've ever heard before. I didn't even know that you could hear at once, basically, or at least yeah, more or less simultaneously, or yeah, in a syncopic rhythm. This number of owls, it's quite amazing, and it's, on the other hand, it projects me to something that has been, well, in the imaginary of many city dwellers, that is going out of the city and finding some kind of, if not pristine, but at least some wilder part of land, which then is no longer the land you come from, and which makes it difficult to perceive it necessarily as your place. So it's a travel. It's a travel. The owl is a travel.
Thank you so much, Alexander. That was beautiful. We'll take one more, Stephen, and then we're going to actually go into breakouts and have a chance to talk about some questions I'll post in the chat momentarily. But please, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks so much for sharing that with us, Melissa. I just thought that I had a similar reaction, I think, to Kenneth's reaction, in that it sort of transported me across time and space a bit. I've lived in Europe for 30 years now, but I grew up in central western New York State on an old farm, and the room that I grew up in as a young boy was barely bigger than a closet, but it was the closest in our house to a dilapidated barn. I went to sleep at night listening to owl call. And so the association it brings to me is one of sort of comfort and falling off slowly into sleep, listening to this owl call. So it transported me not only across the Atlantic Ocean, but from where I am now in life to being a 10, 11-year-old boy in that little closet-sized bedroom that I had, and reminded me of listening to sounds very similar to the ones that we heard. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so we're going to take about 15 minutes in small breakout rooms, and we're going to ask them, posting in the chat now, these 3 questions, which you likely saw in the larger description of the session, but essentially for you to reflect with your partners about when you think of where you belong, what sounds do you hear? What emotions, memories, or realizations come to mind? And do these sounds transplant you to a particular place or time, as Stephen just shared with us? So I'm going to, small groups, about 2 to 3 participants. We'll take 15 minutes and we'll come back together. I know some of you have to leave at the top of the hour. So if you have to leave early, apologies to your partners who may be in that group, but just come back to the main and we'll continue the conversation. All right. Should be getting a join breakout room. Okay.
We are the first group to come back here.
Yep. The message, but I closed the room, so they should be momentarily.
Okay.
I'm curious if anybody had particular places or points in their life that they talked about. Alma, please.
I ended up actually in the room with my colleague from the same floor, Neha, and we had a great discussion. She was talking about the differences about growing up and sounds of belonging in Nepal and how you don't even notice them, but you like the idea is actually you don't really appreciate them, like sounds of people all the time coming, going, the sirens and everything. I would call Neha to say a couple of words about that because we barely managed to leave the room because we were so much into the discussion.
That's great. Isn't it wonderful to like be able to connect on different things outside of your normal day-to-day job environment? That's what we're trying to encourage here, community building. Melissa, you want to share something? Oh, sorry. Other
I
thoughts?
was saying goodbye to folks who have to leave. Thank you
yes,
for
please.
coming.
Thank
Yes. Bye-bye. Be in touch.
I'm sorry, I just wanted Neha to jump in and say a couple
of
things.
Sorry, Alma. Okay. So yeah, what Alma and I just talked about was so I go back to Nepal every year to visit my family. That's where I'm from. And so what we have a house next to a busy road. And I was just telling her about the sounds of the community that I live in there and the way that it's very different from the community that I live here, because here it's a more developed, it's a first world country and it's just very quiet. I live in a house next to, in a residential street. I can't really hear anything. And I'm not really, hearing these sounds of belonging. But when I go in Nepal and I sit there in my house there, I mean, it's almost a cacophony. I mean, I'm next to a busy road out there and you hear all the time these cars going by, crazy sirens and noises and air horns that you would never hear in America. It's not an American sound of air horn. And then there's our guard dog who runs around and we can hear him barking at suspicious people. We've got a shop that's right next by. We've got people coming in all the shop in our next door neighbor. We can hear in Nepali people conversing in Nepali. When I'm there, I don't hear any English, period. So there's no English. So it's a completely different kind of language that you're hearing. We have chickens. So we hear the roosters and the chickens clucking and the roosters going off all day long. We've got family coming. So we have family coming in the door all the time. We always hear them yelling out, that they're here. We hear their motorcycle come in. We'll hear my grandmother kind of yelling out for somebody to come get her something. Yeah, so just those are the sounds that just kind of all day long. And I find them, even if the way I'm describing them are not, you might find them a little bit annoying. I think that these sounds can be comforting in that environment. And then also when you're elderly, disabled, my grandmother is both of those things. She's not as good. She doesn't have any vision in her eyes, but she finds the sounds of the road. She finds the sounds of her community and her family and her chickens. She's always asking about the chickens. Kukurakata, kukurakata. She's always asking us about the chickens, and we're always like, why do you care so much about what the chickens are doing? But she can hear them. She's concerned about them. So I think it's just a way that I was just telling Alma that I would love for my dad to maybe record some of these sounds, because I think it would be important for people in these Western countries to kind of immerse themselves in that kind of sound and kind of put themselves in the shoes of somebody that would be living in that kind of environment, because I'm reminded every year when I go back to visit my family what it's like. But I think that other people could also benefit from that, because I do find it comforting in a very different way. So thanks, Alma, for letting me talk about that.
That was wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll just add, one of our sounds of belonging on the website is by a young Choctaw woman. And she has the sounds of this ruckus kitchen, which is just like pots and pans and a bunch of people collectively cooking and voices on top of each other and yelling. And it's a sound of comfort for her too, and a sound of belonging, because it's family, right? And it's family in the kitchen. So check that out, Neha. I think you'll appreciate that. That was
yes,
beautiful.
Alma did mention that as well. Yes,
yeah,
that's definitely a sound, because we have one of my sisters-in-law comes in and she cooks all day long for the family, and she picks vegetables, she cuts vegetables. It's actually a family, it's an event, like the women come together, they peel the vegetables, and you can hear them talking and cooking, and it's all the sound, of belonging, of community, of family, of the hearth. Yes.
Yeah. And I'll just add too, one thing that I talked about was sort of, we were talking about owls earlier. And for me, a particular bird that's very significant at this point in time for me is like the cardinal, and it has a lot of different symbolism and significance also across cultures, but it's also meant to be sort of a messenger from a loved one who's passed away. And I've lost my mother this past year, and this cardinal keeps coming over and over again. I'm always searching for it, and I've kind of studied its sound and the music that it creates, and every time I go out ever anywhere, I'm always listening for that, and then I go try to track it down. It's like this own conversation I'm having that continues forward as I engage in the place that I feel most at home, which is out in nature. And so it's something that's been really important for me in maintaining that connection and that sense of feeling like I belong. And we also talked about like nature and the sounds of nature kind of feeling like a hug, right? And that's something that I think a lot of us can relate to. So thank you all for sharing, for participating in this. We've posted some links in the chat already, some contact info, but I'd like to turn it over to Alma just to quickly talk a little bit about where the Sounds of Belonging project is headed maybe, and some opportunities we might have for others to engage and get involved further, including potentially another follow-up event that could build on what we talked about today. Alma?
Thank you so much. And I'm glad we had the opportunity to think about this. How often we actually think about where do we belong and what makes us feel like we belong. The intent of this project is to gather stories from everybody in this whole planet and to open up the world of sound and insights from any location we can think about. Because we wanna learn how to listen to our world and to show that to each other, that we can increase empathy and understanding. And as Neha said, that may be something that's extremely significant for people that don't have opportunity to go elsewhere and to understand different locations, and that this can make all of us feel connected and understand and appreciate this planet and our surroundings. So I would love to invite all of you to think about what's the sound that makes you feel like you belong, and maybe go out and listen to the sounds and maybe record, maybe not, but I will follow up. I will send you an email and schedule again Zoom where I can answer all of your questions, and we can discuss about the sound that you want to record or that you recorded or that you want to share, because we really, 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 really want to add all of your sounds to our website if possible. But we want also for you to enjoy this project and to enjoy that process as well.
And Alma, I'm wondering, is there opportunities for like a collective sound of belonging, like to do it where multiple people collaborate on one?
I will have to get back to you on that because I don't think that was part of initial, but it can.
Yeah, that
definitely-
wasn't part of the original, since everyone hears so differently. We really wanted to honor each kind of individual person's sound and knowing it would be different. But I think you raise an awesome question, Juliana. I think it would be very interesting to have collaborative groups potentially. Yes. So Alma will get back on that.
But for a beginning, again, just I want you to, when we finish this meeting, to start thinking about your own sounds of belonging, and I want you to be part of this project. This is project for all of us.
Well, thank you, Alma. Do I have any other final comments from Melissa, Aaron, or you, Alma, that you would like to share before we wrap up? We're actually a little early, so we can continue the conversation if others want to share some more reflections or ask questions. This is an open floor, really.
I would just echo Alma that, we welcome all of your creativity and your sounds, and really want to extend this to a wide net. So if you have other folks who are interested in it, we know technically it's sometimes challenging getting recordings of a bird sound or anything really. So, we want to be able to help with that technical side as well. That's where Alma and the team can assist. But then your narration of why that sound sounds like belonging to you, that's really important to us too, but we can assist in that. And then also to recognize, the opposite of belonging is often like alienated, like, that there's also sounds that are jarring to us, or that we may feel isolated or alienated or disturbing. And, so there's a relationship between the two, but that's why I think in a lot of modern life, there is a lot of cacophony, right? And, it's also a privilege who has access to some sounds versus other sounds, where you live, what zip code you're in. So there are justice issues also involved in the sounds that you're surrounded by. So just kind of stimulate, your imagination, your creativity, your intellect to really join us in creating, this library of sounds that can really help bring us together into each other's worlds.
That's a really good point. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, but if anybody actually wanted to share how they associate belonging in their lives, like, is that even something that's important for you? And if so, why? I mean, what does belonging mean to you? Stephen.
Speaking just personally, belonging for me is very tied to place identity in lots of ways, and that's true even if you're no longer in that place. So harkening back to the association I had when I heard the piece that was played earlier. I've now lived longer away from that place that shaped me than I lived there growing up, but my identity is so tied to it that it brings back very powerful cascade of emotions and recollections when something triggers an association back to that place, as this piece did earlier on. And so, again, this is speaking just personally, but a specific place, whether or not I'm there now, is very central to my identity. And I wonder if that's how other people experience it too.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm just also curious, this is kind of feeling my own curiosity at this point, but is there particular voices that are about belonging for you? Or an association with people that you particularly care for? Not sure.
Well, just to get things moving here, come on, don't be shy. We don't want to do all the talking, but I find it interesting that, you know, certain sounds of music that are very outside my own experience. Like when I first heard, you know, the Bulgarian women's choir, and then they did a recording with the Tuvan throat singers. And it's just this extraordinary sonic landscape, and it gave me a sense of belonging, even though, you know, I've never been to those two countries or those places or didn't know that singing style at all, but it just was like so evocative of a sense of like a deep emotional connectedness or something like that. So I just find that something so powerful about sound. Yes, Stephen, I do associate sound with my identity, like this redwood forest and the owls and the creeks running through it deeply, profoundly. It's like my happy place. But then I often hear sounds from other countries, other parts of the world, other cultures that also evoke that feeling, but I've had no actual experience of them, in which I think is fascinating.
Melissa.
I'll jump in. It's interesting because when I was talking to Neha, and she was born in Nepal and now she lives here, and those are completely two different worlds. And I have similar experience. Grew up being I'm from Sarajevo. Sarajevo is a city, so I was always surrounded by sounds of city. And Sarajevo always, you know, brags about being, you know, Jerusalem of Europe, because at some point you can hear mosque and the church, an Orthodox church, and all of that, all those sounds together. So it's kind of mixture of different cultures and religions. And yes, when I hear those kind of sounds, does remind me of where I come from. But being in Arizona, I learned how to appreciate living together with the nature. I was telling that to Neha, like it's completely not, you can't imagine in Sarajevo that you can have, you know, cardinals or that you can see coyotes or rattlesnakes. And now I love that. I love being part of and love that I'm next to them. And I feel like I have two sounds of belonging right now. One is the nature, and maybe it's the age-wise, like one belongs to younger me and one belongs to now. So that younger me was the all hectic sound of the city, and now I need more quiet nature sounds.
I love that. Kind of a little bit of a sympathy across your life, right?
I had a similar experience. I think the familiarity or comfort of my mother singing lullabies was one of the first things that I heard. And then that similar sense that I've had throughout my life listening to different music. It was as a young child, when I first heard slack key guitar in Hawaii, I felt that sense, that calming sense of like as if it was a lullaby. And then later in my teens, when I went to India and I heard Indian music for the first time, the sitar, same thing. It just brought me into the space that was very familiar, even though the audio experiences were vastly different. So there was a through line in my life, and it continues.
Alma, do you want to add something else?
I do want to add that I would encourage all of you to go to our website and listen to all the stories and then reflect and think about your own story.
Yes, yes, indeed, because they're all very diverse. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're coming toward the end of our session. If there's any final comments or questions or resources you all want to share, this is collective community. And I just want to say thank you to all of our facilitators and co-hosts today, to all of you for participating so openly, and also invite you to stay tuned for our future Bridging Communities Cafes, because we've got 2 more in this inaugural season coming up in May and June. Dates still to be determined, but around the same time, like end of the month period. is ideal. And then we'll take a break and start up the second season come this fall in US based terms. So fall seasonal terms in the US. So anyway, thank you all and welcome to those who are new again. And hopefully we'll see you in the future. Stephen, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just in the breakout group, it came up that it would be useful to have maybe the email that where people, if they're not already on our email list and want to find out more about the series or get information, can be added to our email list. So is it possible to put the email for the Bridges Hub in the chat window?
Yeah, just put it in.
All right, wonderful. So
Wonderful.
anybody who doesn't have that, who wants to go on the email list, take it down. Thanks.
Great. I want to add real quickly, just kind of a brainstorm, is that this is the beginning 2023 or actually 2022 of the UNESCO year or International Decade of Indigenous Languages. And I was actually at UNESCO in Paris in December for the launch of that. And having several UNESCO folks here, I see that there's some great potential with expanding Sounds of Belonging by having Sounds of Belonging being in Indigenous languages and other, any endangered languages to kind of highlight the decade of Indigenous languages. So I just got that idea and want to plant that seed for a future conversation to extend out to, and Alma will talk to Stephen about it as well. Yeah.
Great
Awesome.
idea.
Great idea.
Great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Excellent idea. Thanks.
Yeah, that would be a great way to further bring us together and then really broaden even more. Couldn't you imagine hearing it in all these diverse languages and then hearing it translated? That would be so powerful.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, thank you all
Super.
again. I wish you, whatever time of day you are at, a wonderful rest of it, and hope to see you next month. So thanks, everybody.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana,
Thank you.
for hosting us
Bye.
so beautifully. Great to see you all.
Bye.
Meet which.
Cool.
Gigwabamin. Bye.